In this video tutorial, we're going to learn how to take a look at the JavaScript errors that are generated when we create little errors in our JavaScript. If you recall, in a previous video, we had written some errors and all that happened was nothing. If you remember, we tried to do some alerts and we wrote the code incorrectly and the page just didn't display anything. So what we're going to do in this video is first of all learn why it's important to see the error messages that are generated when we write bad JavaScript. And we're going to look at a couple ways we can have these error messages displayed to us as we're writing our JavaScript code. So the basic question, of course, is why do we want to see JavaScript errors that are being generated? Well, first of all, when you're programming, it's normal to create errors. Actually, it's common, and you can expect to be making errors all the time. Why? Because you can have typos. That's most of the errors, to be honest with you. It's typically typos and the occasional logic error, and sometimes just the system fails and certain errors occur. So having the error messages in front of you are a very important tool because the error messages basically tell you pretty much what's going on. And if you got a good error console, the console is basically just a window that displays all the text errors. If you have a good error console, not only will you know what may have caused the error, most of the time, especially with simpler scripts, you know exactly what caused the error, but more importantly, the good error consoles will actually point out where the error has occurred. So besides making your life as a JavaScript programmer easier, good error messages will also help you to learn JavaScript, because as you write your code, as you generate errors over time, you will find that certain types of mistakes will generate the same types of errors and the same types of error messages. So when you start getting familiar with the error messages, it's going to speed up the whole process of writing your JavaScript, because you'll know right away what the error was. There are a couple ways to display errors as you're writing your JavaScript code. One way is to use the text editor. If you're using a fancy text editor or a fancy program that will allow you to see errors, like we did, for instance, with Dreamweaver. I'm just popping this open. Dreamweaver has some basic JavaScript capabilities where if you do write an error, I'm going to write an error here. JavaScript, there we go. So you see it tells us right here. Now, as you can see, it doesn't actually highlight the right line for some reason here. So if I just back that up. What if I do this? So I go plus. There we go. So now it tells us. Now, if you look here, there's a syntax error on line 12. Code hinting may not work. So it doesn't give you any information about the error, but at least you know that this is a probable error. So if we just put a semicolon, you see the error disappears. Now, Dreamweaver CS4 does have that basic capability where it shows you if an obvious error has occurred, and it will highlight the line. But as you just saw before, it's not always perfect. But at least it tells you as you're writing your code that you have at least an error occurring somewhere. So that's kind of useful. Other programs that are more specialized in JavaScript, other text editors like NetBeans, for example, and there are many others, they will give you much better error information. That said, you don't have to use a fancy program like Dreamweaver or NetBeans to see error messages. You can actually do this in the web browser itself. So let's take a look. So here's our error page. I'm going to refresh this. And we see the alert box popping open as we're used to. So let's generate an error now. Let's do what we did before. Double colon. Now you see, actually, you know what? Let's It should generate something. There we go. So see, we got an error. Dreamweaver gives us this default, you have an error, but it doesn't give us any information about the error. So let's load this page up in the web browser, see what happens. So nothing happens. We don't have the alert box as we saw before. So how do you display errors in the web browser? In Firefox, I'm using this now, and in Internet Explorer, it's two different ways. Let's go back to Firefox for now. So let's just minimize all this. Now, here we go. Here we go. So I'm going to refresh the page. Nothing happens. We don't see anything. But if you go into Tools, Error Console, I'm going to clear this. And I'm just going to refresh the page again. As you can see, we have a pretty decent error here. It tells us what line it's on, line 12. And it even points out where the likely error is, right? Which is kind of cool. So what we can do, and it even shows you, if you click on that link, it even displays it up here. So we can go back, correct this, and if we reload our page, let me just clear this error console, reload our page, and our pop-up should work. There we go. And as you can see, no errors have appeared.